Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by...
When Signs and Displays Direct was launched 15 years ago, it featured a complete line of banners and stands, product displays, and more. Today, the company is known as SDD and is the industry leader in turnkey, no-inventory POP programs. SDD has expanded into branding programs for both corporate and private label, as well as consulting services for retail showroom design and more. Visit sdd-us.com. That's sdd-us.com. All right, time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Andrew Farriss. Andrew, welcome to the show.
How are you, Michael? You well?
Oh, doing great. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Good deal. Well, I'll tell you what, you've got the new album out.
Yes.
Properly titled Andrew Farriss. Yeah. And I have to tell you, it's a very refreshing album.
Why do you say that?
Well, you know what? It is a true country album with Western overtones. When I first listened to the songs, to me, it was like a soundtrack for a Western film that hasn't been made yet.
Yeah, I'm still making it. Yeah, right. That's kind of my idea. I don't know how verbose you want me to be, but I can explain a little bit how I ended up on this journey, if you'd like me to.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very curious.
Okay. Well, people may know my name, Andrew Farriss. I'm mainly the songwriter for the band INXS, and we had a huge international experience. We worked in 52 countries, and we had enormous chart success with many different songs over a long period of time. And I was the main songwriter, mostly with Michael Hutchence, the singer who tragically passed away some time ago. But I decided to always keep writing songs. I've written songs since I was a teenager, and I've been writing songs more recently. But over the years, I wasn't really happy with the quality of some of the recordings of my songs. And so I started re-recording them, both at my home, which is a farm. I live out in the outback, I guess you guys would call it. I don't live on Australia's coastline, as beautiful as it is, or its cities. I live out back in the middle of nowhere, which is a little unusual. Most people in the music industry don't live out where I live. But it's a farm, my farm, I love it. I have cattle and grains when it rains. So anyway, I have a studio there, and I was re-recording some of my music there. And the closest singer around was me. So I started singing, and re-recording these songs. And then I took them over to Nashville because my wife is from Dayton in Ohio. And so that's only about 5.5 hours or so down Highway 75 from Dayton to Nashville. And I started working there with folks and, both writing some newer songs, but also I started re-recording some of the songs and repairing things that I'd written previously or I'd written very recently. And during one of those trips I did with Marlena, my wife, we decided to take a little break in Nashville and go down to the Mexican border. And we thought we'd have like a little pony ride, maybe do some tequila shots and there'd be a swimming pool or something. That wasn't what we got at all. What we got was the real thing. And we basically were right on the Mexican border, the Chiricahua Mountains, where you got New Mexico and Arizona. And we rode horses for 6 hours a day, 6 days straight through the wilderness area in the Chiricahua Mountains. You had the history with the Apache Indians. You had, of course, across the border, the Mexican people in the old days, the Mexican army, and back over in the States, you had the U.S. cavalry in the old days. Up the road, of course, you got Tombstone, and then you would have had the outlaws and, cowboys and all these people trying to, settlers trying to keep their hair on their head and live a peaceful life amongst all this chaos. Well, an old cowboy called Craig Lawson, and his wife Tam. Craig has sadly passed away, but Marlena, myself, and Craig and Tam, we rode all through that wilderness area, and he gave me an education on that amazing wilderness area by horse. So we'd go to old U.S. cavalry abandoned forts in the middle of nowhere. There's no roads there, and you know, it was, if you're serious about going there, you go by on a horse, like up to Cochise's stronghold, or you have to ride a horse or walk through Apache Pass, and these historically significant places that I really wasn't aware of. It's not a Hollywood film. It's real. It exists. And I highly recommend people go and check out these areas. And through that wilderness area, I could also see stagecoach routes with the old wheels, the wooden wheels, still in the ground that weren't four-wheel drive tracks or modern vehicle tracks. That blew my mind, seeing old abandoned silver mines, old abandoned U.S. cavalry forts, riding the horses up to Cochise's stronghold. The point is that when I went back to Nashville and I got in the room to write with girls and guys, you know, younger and older folks, and they say, "Hey, Andrew, what do you want to write songs about?" And I went, the Old West. And they're like, "What? That's not going to get us a hit, man. Like, what are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, look, my mind's on fire. I'm a songwriter. I can't help it. Okay. Like what I just saw, and I listened maybe on Willie's Roadhouse or a few other, and maybe some Texas, Americana or whatever, but I don't, and some LA Americana, I got to give that too, and some Nashville stuff. But a lot of what I hear is not that kind of language being talked about the history and the background of where a lot of country music originally started, because the Europeans, just like in Australia, they brought these old classical instruments with them, like violins. It became fiddles and upright pianos and all these things that made their way into saloons and bars. And they were the instruments they used. They'd combine a guitar and a drum, and they'd make a banjo out of it. And all of that history and the beginnings of what became outlaw country later on, much later on, to me, I found really fascinating, because the pieces came together for me like a musical jigsaw, where I went, okay. And then I realized, if ever I was going to make an album as Andrew Farriss, now I know what I want to do, because I find this area really, really fascinating. And I don't see a lot of, girls and guys into it, but there's enough people, the more I research it, who seem, just like I am, a little frustrated that it's not far more popular, because it's actually very, very interesting.
Exactly.
And the same as in Australia, the same as the background in Australia, is very similar history. Yeah, very
absolutely.
Similar. Yeah.
Well, what was interesting was I had played some of the songs for some of the friends. Yeah. And when I told them, so I want you to listen to this. Here's who this is. Tell me what you think before playing it for them. Well, they immediately assumed it was going to be, modern INXS, if you will, for lack of a better description. And when I played it for them, their jaws just dropped. Yeah. And said, wow. And the thing that amazed them most was the fact that, the songwriter from INXS did a country album that was more country than 90% of the stuff coming out of Nashville today.
Well, thank you. That's really kind of you. But I will say about a lot of the modern country music, there's certain things about it that I love, because it is modern. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And I respect that, and I understand that. And every generation gets their opportunity to take music somewhere else. And that's great. That and the technology that exists today is mind-blowing. Electronic technology of what you can do with what you have. But in a strange way, what hit me too when I got back to Nashville after that horse riding adventure, that in that gritty, kind of dusty, stinking hot area, but it's beautiful. But it related to my own country in the outback, and because I'm a cattle farmer, and grains when it rains farmer. But I in the last 30 years on my farm, I've been through serious droughts that no one's alive that can remember that were that bad. I've been through floods and the mouse plague, which is horrible, and the crazy stuff. So I understand the gritty nature of older music and why people wrote lyrics about what they were writing about, because a lot of these people came from either off old farms, or they'd been confronted with maybe the depression, or coal mines and the dangers of mining, and Well, you know, those old silver mines that I saw down that area where I was riding horses, all these sorts of things, you know, everything's become very urban, and it's become very suburban and cityfied. Everything's covered in concrete. And then people are talking more in this era about urban things that affect them in an urban environment. I don't live in an urban environment. I live way out in the middle of nowhere. And I understand that that's why I related exactly to those areas in the United States that are more regional and outback, if you like, in the States. I get all that. You know, I understand all that. And I think that, you know, for a lot of younger people who are probably, I'd say, fairly disillusioned in modern times with how sanitized everything is. You know, you don't have to face you know, some of the enormous physical hardships that people suffered from nature. You know, you have other kind of hardships that come into play. You know, but my point is that in making this music that I wanted to make, the reason it doesn't sound like INXS is because I know exactly how to write and record for that great band. I know how to do that. I miss those guys. I respect INXS. They're my brothers and my friends. And Michael, who passed away many years ago, what an amazing talent he was. It's not that. It's so much when I decided, what does Andrew Farriss have to contribute? I'm a fan of outlaw country, and like I was saying, some Texas stuff, Americana, and other things that I think still resonate to me. Also, as an Australian living out back and out towards more regional, sort of flat country, as I call it, and you know, I understand those people in small towns. You know?
Yeah. Well, popular music of whatever style, reflects where society is at the time that it's made. Yeah. Now, the thing that struck me with your current album, even though it is, you know, country with a Western, you know, feel to it, you still have great grooves to it. You know, you had that with the songs you wrote for INXS. You have it in this, and the on Run Baby Run, for example. You know, right. It was interesting. Don't Change from Shabu Shaba.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a song. Yeah. When I hear songs, I listen to them with the way they are, but then after I've heard them a few times, I always, you know, start thinking, if it's a song that I like, how would this song work in a different, you know, style? Yeah. Cause to me, the litmus test of a good song is a song that can be done in multiple styles, and it sounds as though it was written to be in that style from the beginning. Now, Don't Change. Now, Don't Change. I always thought that would sound great, you know, as is it like an acoustic, you know, song with guitar, tin whistle, banjo, stand-up bass, what have you. And Run Baby Run kind of does that same thing. Oh, you've got the flute instead of the tin whistle on it, and it's obviously electrified. But the vibe that you've got on Run Baby Run is, you know, what I had, you know, kind of what ran through my mind for a cool way to hear Don't Change.
Yeah, well, this is very interesting. First of all, yeah, I'm a fan of Don't Change too. I'm a fan of most of INXS's music, and that sounds funny because, you know, I wrote and played with them too, you know, live as well. And we worked in 52 countries. And, you know, I think that's part of my journey with my own music now too, is I guess maybe what you're hearing in it is part of my personality. Yeah, you're right. I'm into grooves. And I had to actually stop myself on my album from going down that road significantly of making everything groovy, you know, with funk feels or whatever. But you never know. I might try a bit more of that next. But you know, the idea I really wanted to do on this album was to explore more old school, you know, feels and more countrified, you know, instrumentation. I've worked with technology now for almost 40 years, and I was working with loops and synthesizers and samplers and, you know, and doing tracks like that. And I'd build them all up. Same way you got, you know, young folks now. It's amazing. They can sit in their bedroom and they make this a whole sort of amazing electronic music. And they have a platform now where they can put it all out digitally. And the next minute they got 1 billion streams. And I'm thinking, wow, that's great. Go for it, you guys. That's fantastic. My only comment about all that, because, you know, I've been a part of technology in INXS's music and to a certain degree in my own, but that's not what I wanted to do with my album. In fact, you know, what I'm more going to do more and more, and I've already done it, I've started doing it, is use old school instruments, like you said, in Run Baby Run, the flute. I've had a lot of people go, what's with the flute? It's like, is Will Ferrell going to turn up and stuff? I go, yeah, man, of course he is. You know, you know, I love that. You know, I think he's the dude. But the thing is that, you know, I'm curious now because, you know, look, a lot of modern music, you pull the plug out of the wall. Let's say, Michael, you pull the plug out of the wall, right? The question I would ask, who can play anymore? You know, right? Like, you know, hello. You know, like who plays these old school instruments that we all learnt on when we were younger? You know, I hope they don't go away because there's skill sets by people, both songwriters and musicians, who can play all these instruments, you know, so well. They're very, very important skill sets. You know, you can use modern technology all you like. You can keep sanitizing your music till it just sounds like a sort of a R2D2 on steroids or something. You can keep doing that. That's great. That's fantastic. You know, in fact, you should get an IT award for that. But for old school music, you know, where you have instruments and people who are still very, very talented, I hope those skill sets keep getting passed on. And what I'm doing now, I'm reverse engineering the way I used to work. I'm now using old school instruments that I may have actually recorded originally with technical instruments or electronic or computer-driven instruments. I'm replacing all of that with old school instruments because it's a bit like, you know, it's a bit like a smartphone. You know, you can't beat a smartphone, okay? And 50 years ago, there wasn't a technology there is now. And in 50 years' time or 100 years' time, there'll be different technology again. And they'll look back on us as being, hit those old guys that used to use that technology. How about that, huh? You know, and all those people who are hip and groovy right now, and they're young, they'll be old people, and they're like, I can't believe we used to use that technology, you know?
Yep.
But in years to come, I tell you what, you still won't be able to eat a smartphone, and you'll still need to eat and drink, you know, clean water and eat good food. That'll still be the same in 100 years' time. And I've learned that being a farmer. But I think some of this technology needs to be questioned a little bit as to where it's going, because everyone I ask and I say, does anyone understand where this technology is heading and taking us to? They go, not really. I don't know. Everyone says, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like,
everybody's along for the ride.
Yeah, we're all along for the ride, right? And it's amazing you and I can even talk like this on different sides of the world, and it's in real time. That's fantastic. And people can communicate during a pandemic with loved ones in foreign countries. You know, my wife's family is from Dayton, Ohio, you know, and she desperately, you know, misses those people. And, you know, and it's tough for her. And, you know, I have family in England, even though I'm talking to you from Australia. I have British family as well. And I have many friends in foreign countries as well. And, you know, and I miss those people. But unfortunately, you know, we can't see them. So this technology is great. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that, you know, I think we need to be a little bit more cautious and careful about the society aspect of where we're taking it all. That's all. And you know, that's just my comment. But song-wise, on a more positive note, I want to say that you were talking about my songs before. Yeah, Run Baby Run, that's a single I got out at the moment. If people are interested, they should check out the video that I made to go with Run Baby Run. There's a big country music festival here in Australia called the Gympie Muster. And it's a big country music festival. And I was on my way there to perform there in 2019. It was one of the first shows that I did as a full-blown country artist with a country band. And I pulled in to get a cup of coffee on our way to the state forest where the festival was, and this awesome steam train pulls in with these carriages, and it was like a big breathing monster, like huffing and puffing, and it looked awesome, you know. And there was mums and dads and kids standing around, and there was us, you know, musicians standing around, And I went up to the engineer on the train. And I said, look, man, this thing just looks like awesome. And I said, you know, could I talk to you later? He said, sure. And he gave me a contact. And I said, look, would you be interested in me, like maybe, you know, shooting a video on your train? Thinking he's going to, oh, yeah, sure, man. Look, we can't do that, you know. And our conversation went, and they said, sure. So I got to play with a steam train for a day with the carriages. And what I really wanted to do was like Robert Redford did, I think, or a stuntman did in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I wanted to run along the top of the carriages and jump. And now I haven't finished. And then I wanted a horse to come up next to me with the girl bringing the horse. And I wanted to jump off the carriage onto the horse. And all these people go, you are not going to do that. I said, we do not want you doing that. And I said, but that's what I want to do. I want to like make a full-blown cowboy video here, you know. And that's where I'm having fun with it, okay? You know, at the moment, but I'm serious too in the lyrics of my songs where, you know, like Starlight is about my wife's stage 4 metastatic breast cancer journey, even though it's got mariachi trumpets and it harks back to a sort of almost like 60s, early 70s sound. You know, the lyric is very gritty and very real in that song. The same with Apache Pass. You know, I give respect to the First Nations who were, you know, when Europeans first came to our countries, same to Australia with the Aboriginal people, but, you know, with Apache Pass and the enormous historical, you know, sensitive subjects that come along with some of these things, I decided to go and visit these things lyrically, not to be, you know, not to be, what's the word, trite, or I'm not, you know, I'm not fooling around. I've actually,
right. You don't want to do a superficial, yeah,
right.
type deal.
No. I respect all of this, and lyrically, you know, I'm going to probably explore a bit more of this, you know, and go down this road where I like to talk about culture. The same with Australia. There's a song in there called "With the Kelly Gang" that's about Ned Kelly, and he wore a big iron helmet that he made as armor back in the 19th century. Actually, Mick Jagger starred in a film called Ned Kelly or something like that. Yeah, and all these characters, these old outlaw characters, they're all real people. They weren't like, you know, this is not like you know, artificial reality. You know, these, you know, artificial intelligence. These people were real, and their lives were real, and they did all this stuff. And to me, I find it fascinating. You know.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, Andrew. Were you, you know, growing up a fan of country music?
Yeah, well, as a kid, well, there was a big artist in Australia, more a folk artist, but he's called country as well because it's country as well. But called Slim Dusty. He was a huge figure in Australian country, an enormous giant of a man. You know, not so much physically, but, you know, in what he did for Australia. And he pioneered, if you like, early country music in Australia, along with some other older Australians as well, Smokey Dawson, there's many of them. But it was really, to me, I grew up listening to all kinds of music. Dad had a record called Hootenanny, that had all kinds of like Black Hills of Dakota and these old kind of old school, you know, shoe fly, don't bother me, shoe fly, you know, these kind of old songs on them. And I grew up as a kid listening to these records. And the same with at night, I used to have a little transistor radio under my pillow, and mum and dad didn't know I was doing it. But in the old days on AM radio in Australia, I didn't realize it wasn't like segregated radio is nowadays. We had different radio, you know, genres of music all chopped up. In those years when I was a kid, they used to play all kinds of music. They'd play classical music. They'd play a little bit of jazz, a little bit of Latin groove stuff. They'd have some pop, a little bit of rock because it was early rock. And then they'd have country music, and they'd play like Johnny Cash. You could hear, you know, Ring of Fire, or, you know, North to Alaska, dun, 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 all that stuff. You know, I used to listen to all of that. And it wasn't, then I went on this huge journey with the INXS guys, and I had this whole other experience. You mentioned Don't Change before. Well, I'm amazed how many artists have covered that song around the world, including Bruce Springsteen covered it when he came out to play in Australia. and so did the Smashing Pumpkins. But many artists around the world have covered INXS songs, not just that song, but many other songs, and that blows me away too, because you're kind of lucky if anyone likes you.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. I'll be remiss because I know viewers are going to say, that I didn't get to enough INXS topics here. Yeah. Now, you guys had a really interesting 1983 because if you from what I've read, you made your debut in a bar in San Diego, and like 24 people were there to watch INXS first show in America. And then like 2 months later, you're playing the US Festival for 250,000 people.
Right.
What was that like to go from 24 to 250,000 within weeks? Okay,
well, it scared the shit out of me. I don't know how the other guys felt, but I remember being 23 years of age back then, and I didn't understand the United States. Really, I'd been on a little trip before that, a year before that, as a kind of like a cultural adventure trip to the US. And then we turned up a year later and playing as a band. But yeah, no, that was huge. But our whole journey as INXS, we worked in 52 countries, I think it is 52. And that was always the same. We'd start off, you're playing to an old drunk and his dog in a bar somewhere. And the next minute, you're playing to like, thousands. And then if you were fortunate, you end up in arenas and stadiums or whatever. But I never looked at our success, and I give respect to the other guys in INXS. Is that one of the things that really, I think, helped us as a group of guys is we were kind of like a little unit in a military sense, where we went from country to country, but we wouldn't mind if we weren't playing to many people. We were playing to too many people. We just took the view that we were lucky that anyone liked us and that we would keep doing it. And we kept going back and doing that over and over and over again. And that was what our success really was. I don't know that we were the best band ever to come out of Australia. I don't know. There were other bands I think who were better than us at the time. But what I think separated us, and I'd say the same for AC/DC too, and the Bee Gees too. A lot of folks may not realize that those guys lived in Wagga Wagga for quite a few years from Bee Gees, which is out back in Australia, like out kind of in an area like where I live in the outback. But the interesting thing is it's the ones who keep going back again and back again and back again internationally that really is the meter test. That tests you a lot, that stuff. And you start to realize you simply have to love playing music together. It's not based on, we didn't have a big chart hit with that one, so I guess we're dead and buried. That's not the attitude. The attitude you need to have is you love playing music,
mm-hmm.
and writing music. That's the attitude that you really got to have, and if you don't have that, you get into trouble.
Absolutely. Well, tell me this, you mentioned playing like 52 different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you're going to so many different places, did you find that you had to change the set list because certain songs were a lot more popular in some places than others?
Sure. Well, that's the funny thing with INXS. Like, I don't know how many top 40 hits we had in Australia anymore. I don't know anymore. Same within the US. We had a lot of top 40 hits, but they're not necessarily the same songs. And the same would go to Europe and even Asia and other places. They'd like, yeah, we don't want to hear that. We want to hear this song. We're like, you want to hear that song? They're like, yeah, we're like, okay, well, they're all songs that we wrote or had as, well, like I said, you're lucky anyone likes that, so like, well, great, but I think that was the interesting thing with the INXS catalog is I think that somehow we pushed the right buttons with people in different cultures, and I don't know why exactly, but I think Michael was an amazing dynamic personality. Talking about 1983, a couple of quick things, if I've got time, I'll just mention that.
Absolutely. We're here as long as you want to be here.
All right. Well, I can remember that first time that INXS went on Rock and Roll Tonight, I think it was, on the television show in Los Angeles. And Eric Clapton was on that same show, as was Simple Minds, the Scottish British band, who I'm a huge fan of both those artists. And, I got to meet them. But the thing is that backstage, I can remember that Ray Manzarek turned up, and he came up, and I at first I was kind of, I didn't recognize him fully, and he said, "I'm just looking for your singer, man. Where is he?" And I said, "Oh, he's over in the corner there." And he goes, "Can I talk to him?" And I said, "I don't see why not." And then I thought, that's Ray Manzarek from the Doors, you know. And he goes over and he says to Michael, "Hey man, I was just sitting at home watching your band on television, and he said I freaked out because you reminded me so much of Jim Morrison. I had to come and see you guys and talk to you." And he did, and he came and talked to Michael for quite a while. But this was like one of the first trips we ever did to the US in '83. And we were all over MTV in those days, and we were on television a lot. And we were playing live consistently. We played, we did 13 3-month tours by road of the United States, just or North America. In the '80s alone, we did sort of something similar in the '90s for a while, and came back in the 2000s as well. But you know, during all those adventures, as I call them, you know, this seemed to happen to us a lot. We went up to Vancouver to play a gig up there, and Nile Rodgers came back and said, "I really want to cut a track with you guys. I've been watching you and listening to you on MTV." And we're like, "That's Nile Rodgers, you know, he's the king of funk. Wow." You know, and Nile said, "Yeah, look, you guys write me the right song, you know, we'll write yourselves a good song, and you come to New York City and you'll cut a track." So Michael and I wrote this song called Original Sin, and about school kids playing together, and I had this funky sort of riff stuff that I'd already had the riffs and a little demo of it, you know, and so we tracked it with Nile, and it was the third drum take I think we did, and then we got the rhythm track in 3 takes. And Nile said, "Look, you know," and we're like, "Oh, this is just awesome." You know, I'm standing there holding a chord chart for Nile to play to, and just in awe of the man and the whole situation. And we just, as we were loading our gear in to do that recording session, David Bowie's gear was being lugged out on the same day for he'd recorded Let's Dance, the album there, and with Nile Rodgers, of course, producing it and playing guitar on it. And but I'll remember that, you know, we were doing some backing vocals on Original Sin, and Niall's going, "Yeah, man, this is pretty good, you know, but I think, you know, do you mind if I make a phone call and I'll see if I can get someone with a slightly different voice to come in?" We're like, "Sure." I mean, okay, you're the record producer. He makes his call. Well, Daryl Hall walks through the door. We're like, "That's Daryl Hall," you know, like, hello, you know, and he was a massive, massive star then, you know. And he was cool as a cat, you know. He starts singing. If you listen to Original Sin, you'll suddenly hear his voice very clearly in the chorus, singing along with us, you know. And for that, you know, with Nile Rodgers and Daryl Hall, you know, my heart goes out to those guys. We were just young, unknown people from Australia. They didn't have to do that with us, but they did it, and we had support our whole career working with that, you know, level of quality of record producers and recording musicians. And our whole careers in INXS has really been a very musical one. And you know, I pay respect to all those people, and if anyone's ever out there listening to me rattling on, I just want to say thank you for all those years that people did all that stuff with us, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, you mentioned a good funk groove.
Yeah.
Need You Tonight.
Yeah.
That song. Now, I'm going to tangent for a moment. We'll come back to Need You Tonight. But as I mentioned before, with Don't Change, hearing that song done in a totally different way. Right. There's a number of songs that you wrote that INXS did that I would love to hear done in like a Bar-Kays, funk, recording of, because I think that, Tight would be great, but there's a number of songs I think would be really good to hear that way. So.
Yeah, cool. Well, I actually wrote the song Tight for Tom Jones. I met him when I was in Texas, and we went along with the guys with INXS, and Mike was very jealous. We went down to Willie Nelson's studio in Purdnell's there, and we tracked this thing, and it never got released. The record label got really weird about, the producer guy. He didn't want to do this, and he didn't want to do that. And I'm like, well, we got a gig to do anyway. See ya. So, like, it's not our problem. It's your problem. But I love Tom Jones. Tom's awesome. Look, you know, the funk thing, I haven't forgotten about it. And I know it's something that people love, you know, and thank you that I've done and we did as INXS and me as a writer. Yeah, I've always loved funk music. And you know, now that people are paying attention to my country music stuff that I've been doing, my old school sort of Americana, Australiana journey I'm on, I'm going to start to fuse some other, you know, some background stuff into it. You know, I'm going to have some fun with it. And if people keep buying it, I'll keep doing it. You know?
Absolutely. Well, to get back to where we started with Need You Tonight, that was a song that we had quite a few people asking the stories behind it. That's one of the things that we haven't gotten to is the fact that the viewers saying, I want to know the story behind this one and that one and this one. Right. So, but Need You Tonight was one of the most popular ones. So tell us the story on that.
Okay. Well, you know, Need You Tonight was one of a few songs that were written for the Kick album, which INXS is a massively successful international album that we had out. And I'm going to say this, you know, probably to my own detriment, but those songs I wrote 34 years ago with Michael, and we had I think it was our sixth studio album, being Kick, and we'd had, you know, quite a lot of success before that internationally with various songs as hits. But you know, we were on a tour bus in Germany, I think it was, and we started talking about the next album, because the album before that, Listen Like Thieves, had a top 5 US hit in it called What You Need. And that was a massive hit for us, and worldwide as well. But we recognized that something was shifting gear for us as a band, and people were really paying attention to what we were doing by fusing funk music with rock music. Wasn't a lot of people doing that back in 1985 when we were doing it. And, you know, disco had become very uncool by the end of the 70s. And even, you know, blues was disappearing a little bit more into the underground and more, you know, and people were getting insecure in the 80s about, well, what's next? And so then, you know, we started doing more and more funk with rock. And, you know, like Run DMC did it with the Aerosmith song and Walk This Way and all the stuff they were doing. But when it came to Need You Tonight, I'd actually, Michael was living in Hong Kong in those years, and I was living in Sydney, in the city back then. And we had permission, sorry, I got off track there, by the other guys in INXS to write all the songs for Kick, Michael and I, on a tour bus in Germany. And that still amazes me to this day, because bands are usually very competitive and weird about the songwriting thing. You know, they'll get really strange about it. But the other guys in the band, my brothers and Gary and Kirk, said, no, we'd like you and Michael to write all the songs for Kick. Or we didn't know what the album was called yet, but we'd like you to write all the songs, because you guys have had the best track record of writing hits for INXS. And we said, sure, we'll do that. And we were really blown away that you're giving us a permission to do that. And they're like, yeah, go ahead and do it, but you better kick ass. And we're like, oh, okay.
No pressure.
Right? No pressure, exactly. Well, the same with the record company and management and everything. We're like, no pressure. You just need a huge album, you know. You know,
that's all.
That's all we want, you know. And so Michael and I took that very seriously. I remember when What You Need was a top 5 US hit, you know, and our you know, dearly departed manager, you know, back in those years, he recently passed away. He called me at home and he said, what do you make of having this enormous hit, you know, with What You Need? And I said, oh, it's great. And he goes, you should get out and, you know, get shit-faced or do whatever you got to do. And, you know, and I said, yeah, sure. Thanks for calling. Hang up the phone. And then I remember calling Michael saying, how do you feel about this? And he said, I feel real weird about it. And I said, yeah, me too. And I said, I don't know why I feel strange about it. I should be partying and and, you know. And he said, I think it's because what's next is the big question. What do you do next? You know, and I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, you know. And so that's why I started steering some stuff on Need You Tonight musically. I'm trained a little bit classically as a musician, you know, and I obviously I sing a bit, but I've never been the singer that Michael was and probably never will be. But he never played instruments. His voice was his instrument, and he was a great lyricist. I write lyrics too, but his passion in his lyrics always impressed me. And so that's the way we worked a lot. You know, he'd write lyrics and come up with some lines, you know, and some melody ideas, and I would mainly write the music, including feels. And so it fell to me to sort of work more on this funk thing. And so I called a cab to go to work and write with Michael in Hong Kong. And then as the cab was coming and I was going to catch an airplane, it was all very pressurized. The cab's literally turning up, driving up to the front gate. And I started working on what became Need You Tonight on this 8-track tape recorder. And I had a drum machine pattern, and that ended up on the record. And I put this sort of sample bass thing on it, and I had these guitar riffs going, and I'm going, this is really important. I don't know what I'm doing exactly. I don't know what this thing is, but I think it's important. And so I ran out to the cab driver and said, can you just wait for a minute? I'll be right back. And it got really complicated all of a sudden, where I was in this emotional anxiety because I suddenly recognized that I think musically what I was doing was really important, and that I had to keep going with it. At the same time, I had a flight to catch. So in the end, in those years, I just bounced it down onto a cassette, to a rough recording, literally just shut the front door. I don't even know if I turned anything off in the house, and jumped in the cab and went to the airport with my passport, you know, and this cassette with these other songs I had on it. And I got off the cab at the other, you know, the plane, excuse me, at the other end in Hong Kong. And I drove to the Watson Cedarhar estate where I was working with Michael in China. And Michael said, what do you got? What have you been working on? And I played him. That was the first thing I played him. He goes, love that. It's cool. So we had a 24-track tape recorder, and he basically just sang a song into this. Within 5 minutes of me being there, he scribbled this lyric out. And basically the melody that you hear and the lyric that he sung on Need You Tonight was formed by me from that 10 minutes or so before I got in the cab, and him with that 5 or 10 minutes when I arrived. That was how that song came together. Don't ask me how that happened, because it's bizarre. You know?
Amazing.
Yeah, really weird.
Yeah, that's what I refer to it here on the show as the art and magic of songwriting.
Yeah.
Because you never know what it's going to hit, where it's going to come from, or what you got. But there's those times where people have said, you know, it's just like divine intervention. Everything came into place, and there it is.
Well, I believe in divine intervention, most definitely, Michael. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. And, I, as my dad used to say, everyone has the inalienable right to go to hell in anywhere they choose. Right?
There you go.
There you go. It's up to you. Anyway, but it's supposed to be a sense of humor with that. It's kind of funny. It kind of is. But I was going to say that, yeah, we all choose our destiny in the end, But I think, to me, that songwriting journey that I got on with Michael for Kick album, we ended up having 5 top 10 hits all around the world off that one album. And I got to tell you, Michael, that freaked me out, that whole experience. I think it freaked all of us out, because that was the hyper jump then from doing arenas. We were already doing big gigs around the world, but next minute we were a stadium act. And that, and even then we burst our own bubble. People still, especially show business people, went, what were you guys thinking? Why did you stop playing stadiums? And we said, well, when you need a financial controller in your life, and you started off making music because you simply like to play music, and you're writing songs because you believe in what you're doing, the moment you need a financial controller, you're in trouble, because you have a gravy train of people all following you around, and their lives and their livelihoods and their families are depending on you. And you've got all these people and these corporations and other people, and they're all pushing your buttons, and they need this and they wanted that, and you signed this and you didn't do that. At the end of the day, the reason you should be doing what you're doing is because you love writing and playing music. That's the reason why you should be doing it.
Absolutely. Well, tell me this, Andrew, because you guys had so many moments, where you hit the next, level of success, if you will. There had to be multiple times where you stopped at, wow, it can't get any bigger than this. And then the next thing you know, it's bigger than that. What memories do you have of those, you know, plateaus, if you will, where, yeah, you were kept finding yourself surprised that the rocket ship just kept on going?
Yeah. Well, you know, I gotta say, I'm gonna talk creatively for a minute. I'm just, you know, I thank God that we had the artistic, you know, skill sets within INXS to do what we did and to work, like I said before, with the level of musicians and producers, record producers that worked with us were very, very highly talented, sort of, you know, pointy end of the airplane type people who were very, very clever at what they did. And we got embraced by those people. And like I said, I thank those people because they helped us along in our journey. It wasn't all about us and our egos or our talent pool. Most enormously talented people, in the end, as another saying of my dad's, is no one gets through life without help from other people. You need help from other people your entire life. From the moment you come into the world, and even as you go out in the world, you're going to need people helping you. And it's the same with the international music business. It's no different. It's not about people's egos and about this other stuff. It's about their ability to cope and understand and keep your feet on the ground. It really separates a lot of people. When I call success, success is having a life to hang your platinum album on. That's success. Is that the life you're living is the success, not the things that come along with it. It's your ability to maintain a life that's good for the people around you and your health. That is what you hang your success on. Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, tell you, we're talking about Kick. I had read, I don't know if this is true or not, but I remember reading that when you turned that album into Atlantic, they weren't hip on it.
No, they were kind of, look, you know, the thing with INXS is we were a kind of record company nightmare. So I have some empathy for the record company at the time. I have no bad feeling towards them, but it's true. What happened was we made Kick and we were really excited about it. And the record producer, Chris Thomas, who was a massively successful record producer in his own right, he was excited. We were all excited about it. And the management, everyone, but we took it to the US record label. The Europeans liked it, by the way, but we took it to the American record label. They're like, what is this? And we're like, oh, this is our new album. They're like, this is like from outer space. Can't you guys do what everyone else is doing at the moment and go, please, you just go, you know, put some spandex on, get a hairband together, come back, and then we'll talk, okay? And just make music like those guys, and we'll sell so many records for you. And we're like, that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to put this music out because we believe in it, you know? And they're like, no, but this is, we don't like this. We don't understand it. They didn't want to take it to radio. Can you believe that? They said, we don't want to.
Unbelievable.
That you need to have it remixed. You know, it needs to be done by people who know what they're doing. And we're like, oh, but we know what we're doing. And the same with record producers say, we all know what we're doing, you know. All you got to do is put it out, take it to radio, you know. And that's what happened. In the end, I think, you know, it went to radio and radio loved it. You know, and I think that, you know, I thank the people who were supporting us during those years, who believed in what we were doing. And I do have some empathy for the record company, though, because I think I still don't think they fully understood what we were trying to do. And I, you know, that's not their fault, you know.
No, but I don't know how you can listen to that album and not just go, you know, hit.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is just one of the songs, besides Tonight was Never Tear Us Apart, that song has been covered by I don't know how many people now around the world over and over again, but you're talking about accolades and achievements or whatever by the band. One of the more recent ones in Australia, there's an Australian rules football team called Port Adelaide in one of our cities in Australia as an Australian rules football team. And one of the big media honcho guys down here championed it as a football stadium, you know, anthem for the football team. And they took it on. And I have to tell you, culturally, what happened to me when I saw a stadium full of people singing and chanting a song that I wrote with Michael called Never Tear Us Apart. And all these, Australians are singing along passionately to this song and standing up in a stadium. And we're not even there performing it. They're just all singing the song, And I sat down in amazement, and I was quite emotional when I watched that, because I thought, that's not a chart hit. That's not about money. What is that about? And I went, our music's gone into culture. Our music's actually been integrated into culture, both in Australia and in other countries. We are part of people's, people get married, divorced, have children to our music. And you're like, this is a very, serious stuff. It's not, I don't take that lightly. And the other guys in the band didn't either. It's like, that's really serious, heavy stuff in that sense. And I'm world aware. I get all that. Two of my children, even though I live in Australia and I've got a funny accent, like people in England, a bit sort of similar, but two of my children were born in England out of my three beautiful children. England's up here on the world and Australia's down here, at the bottom of the world, but we got funny accents, but, people are people all around the world. And, mostly the sad part is most, people in the world all want the same things out of life. At the end of the day, we might all have different languages or different belief systems even, but most people want the same things out of life. Most normal people.
Absolutely.
It's been great talking to you, Michael. I was going to say my country rock journey that I'm on, if people keep buying what I'm doing and they're into it, then I'll keep doing it. If, I might even keep doing it anyway, just because I'm having fun. But, if people support it and they rally to what I'm doing, that'll make me a lot more enthusiastic about continuing to do it, because I don't want to just push a shit up a hill with a mule behind me. I really want to, if folks enjoy what I'm doing, I'll keep doing it,
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, for those who haven't heard it, you will definitely enjoy it. It's the thing that strikes me with it, Andrew, is it rings true. You could tell that this is a passion project for you. You could tell that the people, the type of music that you're doing, is something that you truly enjoy, and you've listened to the people who came before you in that genre. It really have absorbed the things that they had done.
Exactly. Thank you.
So, well, tell you what, everybody, on that note, we will wrap this edition of Music Night at the Majestic up. Andrew Farriss, thank you for being here, everybody. AndrewFarriss.com. You can get everything, Andrew, that you could possibly want there. Check out, his album, the video for Run Baby Run. I'm a train guy. So seeing the steam engine, the end there, I thought was really cool. So
yeah, there's some crazy characters in there. Yeah, you got to check it out. But I thank you, Michael, for talking to me, and I hope everyone that's listening out there, I hope their families are healthy and they're well, and safe travels. As the French say, bonne chance. Yeah.
And on that note, we'll just wrap this one up. Andrew, thank you very much. Everybody, have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.